Hello, friends of Bliss. We are live on location, not in San Francisco. Greetings from scenic New York City, and hello to my good friend Jonathan Eichholz joining us today. John, tell us about yourself.
Definitely hello, Bliss Wine family. Super happy to have, Andrey here in the greatest city in the world and the best coast to be on in America out here on the East Coast. But I'm a New York-based sommelier who's spent some time at the Modern, at Aquavie. I do some things with Guildsong these days, but nonetheless a neighborhood neuroscientist and historian turned sommelier via the world of cheese microbiology, and now drinking wine with this wonderful, talented gentleman who selects some of the great wines of planet Earth.
Wow, that's a very audacious beginning. We wanted to take you to another place that we think is definitely on the prime kind of forefront of the wine world. We're going back to Australia, and here we're going to be just outside of the city of Adelaide. We are going to be drinking Brothers Koerner. So a little background on this wine, on this winery. Specifically, we have two brothers, Damon and Jono. If you know any Australian people, their nickname often ends with an O. Shout out to my former roommate, Robbie. Robbie Lozelle, who waited for 9 months to tell me what his nickname in Australia was. And
what was it?
He would never actually told me. His girlfriend got drunk and told me one time. Robbo. Yeah. So the Brothers Koerner has started their winemaking careers by training their craft in Corsica, of all places. So if you see some of their other wines on our wine website, you'll see things like Pigato and Momolo and things that you're like, huh, Australia? But here we have perfectly for the summertime these delicious, thirst-quenching, juicy, yummy wines from their Brothers Koerner project. These wines are sourced from their vineyards in either Adelaide Hills, right outside of the aptly named city of Adelaide, or Clare Valley, about an hour and 45 minutes to the north. This is a really warm place, so you would expect the wines to be big and rich and juicy, except for Adelaide Hills is actually, did you know this, future master sommelier Jonathan Eichholz?
2/3 of one.
Yes. The coldest wine growing region, GI, in Australia is Adelaide Hills.
Wind helps you, right?
Wind helps. The wines here are very crisp, very delicious. And like I said, it is summer outside, so we wanted to give you something to beat the heat after Hana Sabati last month. And so we are going to jump right on in. And the first wine you're going to taste, none of these wines are exactly what they seem, which is part of the reason why we love the Koerner brothers so much. The first wine that we are tasting is Pinot Gris. John, why is it pink or orange or this interesting color?
I mean, it's the grape variety itself, right? Pinot Gris has these beautiful pink skins that gives you this kind of electric peach coming out of the glass here, which is super fun to see. And I guess also, like, aromatically, this is like perfect summer wine here. I feel like I want something like this. I've really been on like a watermelon salad kick. Unfortunately, my significant other, I don't think she loves watermelon.
How do you not like watermelon?
I don't know. We were at a dinner party.
Boo, Alex, boo!
But we were at a dinner party the other night, and someone served watermelon salad. And I'm like, yes, this is everything I want in life. But also, like, this wine does exactly that for you. Like, bright, refreshing, watermelon-y, that, like, nice, like, feta, sweet green herb element that's perfect for summertime.
How much salt do you put on your watermelon?
Should I be putting salt on my watermelon?
Shame. Shame on you, sir.
I recently learned a new metric of salt, which is the Russian amount of salt. And how many kilograms is that?
No, the idea of putting salt in watermelon is something I was ignorant to until maybe about 3-4 years ago. And if you put just a little bit of finishing salt on watermelon, it makes the entire flavor pop. So not really a secret, but now you know.
No, I'm glad to know. And that's going to make this wine even more fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, no. The idea with wines of this color is that all color in wines in general comes from contact with skins. Pinot Gris is a pink skin grape. When it's fully ripe, just like other grapes that are kind of in that same family, like Gewürztraminer, for example, they do actually have a pink skin when fully ripened, and if you keep the wine in contact with said skin, this is what you get. A damn delicious 12.9% alcohol, fully dry, tasty Pinot Gris. Pinot Gris is the third most widely planted, almost second, widely planted grape in Australia, and it is something that the Aussies, they do love because it's bloody hot.
Yeah, and I feel like also if you're making Pinot Gris like this would be the third most planted grape variety in the country. It's so bright and refreshing, and I think when you compare this Pinot Gris to other examples, right, it has more going on than you'd find in Italy. It's more elegant than Alsace, but at the same time, it occupies this like fun, possible rosé adjacent world.
Yeah.
In the style that they're making it.
Yeah, it's like, you know when people say they want orange wine and they really don't want orange wine? They just want something that looks orange? That's perfect for that as well. The next wine is a actual Brothers Koerner rosé. The reason I say actual rosé is because the next one we taste is a light red, which is essentially basically another rosé. But this is again Jono and Damon playing around and being fun. And normally a rosé is a wine that is made from red grapes that doesn't sit on contact with skins for a really long time. Same idea here, just 3 hours on the skins. But because we're in Australia and we don't have stringent rules like we do have in the rest of the world, what does this smell like to you?
To me, this is like a very specific New York tasting note, but I feel like when you go for dim sum and you get kind of like that cool dim sum tea, like oolong tea, it has like that really nice like floral brightness to it, but at the same time, this like nice zest of lemon on top of it. It's definitely a really bright style of rosé, which is super cool. And, you know, in the words of the philosopher Rick Ross, you know, rosé, that's my nickname. So
that is a great nickname. Thank you, Rick Ross. And I was actually just going for like what grape does it smell like, but
what grape does it smell like?
But no, I mean, that was a great
like
description.
This oolong tea thing, and like I feel like I really enjoy that with a lot of my summer wines because there is like some like heft and roundness to it, which I think is like that whole tea element of, you know, the phenolics of the varieties that are hanging out in here. But you would, looking at it, you'd think it's some sort of like Grenache adjacent rosé friend.
But like I said, nothing is what it seems.
Exactly.
Merlot. 60% Merlot, 20% Chardonnay, 20% Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, throw those rules of it having to be only red grapes out the window. Just like they do in Champagne, you can mix red and white grapes together and you can make delicious wine. Who knew?
And then the Sauvignon Blanc Chardonnay combination here is really cool because you get kind of like this breath of texture from the Chardonnay, but then like the chisel of Sauvignon Blanc and like that little prickly greenness minty on the outside. That's kind of a fun combination. I don't know anybody else is doing like Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Merlot as a rosé. It's kind of picking and choosing, you know, all the great stuff because there aren't, you know, rules. There are no rules.
Well, and it has like a little bit of that kind of greenness from the Sauvignon Blanc. It's actually like, I think like I was gonna say it works really well with the allium family. Yeah, it has like this affinity for onions, garlic, but like, you know, not like sitting there like eating raw garlic. That's weird. But like anything that has like a garlic heavy like presence that you want like to not be overpowered or overpower the wine. I think something like this works really well with that combination. But also, this is one of those you know, very versatile wines. It's deceivingly like complex and deep. You can throw it with seafood, you can throw it with shrimp, you can throw it with pretty much anything. But once again,
I'm also going to take this in a completely different direction, right? With rosé, right, you can have this any time of day that you want. I think this is like sick breakfast wine.
Fuck yeah.
And I feel like for you West Coast cats, it's, you know, avocado toast. For us East Coasters, this is, you know, everything bagel, lox, cream cheese.
I was gonna say I was setting an internal timer of when lox was gonna come out of his mouth.
Why is that?
Because it was going to. The wine itself is, like I said, it's very light, very refreshing, perfect, completely ice cold, but you let it warm up and you're going to see a lot of those aromatic complexities really stand out.
Yeah, and even the little touch that's been in our glass is just getting more and more aromatically fascinating. And like, to me, what makes like wine enjoyable is kind of the fascination and intellectual stimulation that you can find in every glass. And like every time you go to smell this wine, something different is popping out, which is interesting. That's both delicious and fun to play with.
Yeah, and the Koerners do some interesting stuff with Chardonnay. They use it in a couple of different blends, but it's always like 5 to 15% because they pick it like first, and it's so super acidic and super tart, and it just adds a little bit of a backbone here. And interestingly enough, normally Chardonnay is not thought of as like a really super acidic grape, except for it's whatever you want to make it. So it's here it provides that extra layer of crispness and structure that you want in the summertime.
And I feel like what's also really fun about kind of Chardonnay from this part of the world, like all the top producers in Australia who are, fortunate enough to blend Chardonnay from around the country are using Adelaide Hill Chardonnay in their top bottlings, like for that tension and focus.
Yeah, because again, coldest place in Australia. So the next one is ironically called the light red, which is let's be honest, like this is rosé too, but this is the exact polar opposite of it. This is normally the kind of rosé that hip young sommeliers raise their nose up to because they're like, oh, it's so big and colorful and slutty looking. And but to be fair, if you do it judiciously and you don't over-ripen the grapes, all you're doing here is you're bleeding off color.
Yeah.
So essentially, you can make a wine that comes in at 12.6% alcohol, and all you're doing is you're taking the really beautiful, bright flavors of one of my favorite undercover my favorite grapes, Grenache. Because as most people that know me, I rail against bad Grenache. Well,
it's hard to make grape Grenache.
It is, yeah. I would say it. There's a reason why. You know what? I'm just going to get off my soapbox. I'm not going to speak.
Your Grenache box.
I'm not going to speak ill of the French like I normally do. The wine here is 65% Grenache and 35% Syrah, and here we are in the Clare Valley. So we are fully inland. The Clare Valley is a very interesting place. The city of Adelaide sits on a cold body of water called the Gulf of St. Vincent. And the Gulf of St. Vincent, if you follow it out, the next piece of land you're going to hit is Antarctica. So very cold water, just like San Francisco. It is something that provides a fog, essentially, that descends into the Clare Valley, sits on top of these grapes, and then cools it off. The grapes are, generally speaking, grown in a place that it's like 104 degrees during the daytime, but the fog comes in and the nighttime temperatures drop. It's far enough away from the water, so you have a 50-degree temperature swing, and you're able to make really fun stuff like this. This is watermelon wine. You talked about watermelon with the Pinot Gris. This wine, I think, is definitely right up that alley. One of the challenges of food and wine pairing is finding that bridge, something that's both on the plate and in the glass. You don't always want to make it a 4-lane highway, though. But in this case, that bridge is pretty evident. So aside from watermelon, what else what else do you think would go well with this?
I think you're hanging out outside. There's nothing wrong with like fuller-bodied rosé, because when do you really want to, in the summertime, start reaching for intense red wines? And I feel like this is what I want with my burger. I mean, here in New York City, a couple of streets away, J.G. Mellon on 74th and 3rd Avenue, one of the best burgers on planet Earth. Like,
nice plug.
I'm gonna sneak this in and take a couple of sips right next to my Budweiser and my shaken gin martini, because they only shake their martinis.
Okay, so being from St. Louis, you have to call it Bud Heavy. Now, Anheuser-Busch does not appreciate you calling it Bud Heavy. They will tell you this, but then my comeback is, then why did you make a Bud Medium? Bud Select. Sorry, that wine is trash. I mean, sorry, that beer is trash. Now, the wine here is, you have to admit that there's a big difference between this and this. The world of rosé is not often thought of as being very wide, but these are two very polar opposites, I would say, right? This is what I would call daytime, nighttime. You said breakfast, I would say right as the sun is going down. You start to reach for something like this. Or if you live in a place where there is no summer, like San Francisco, there is a great rosé to have any point in time during the day, because it's surprisingly rich and textured on the palate, but still, like I said, really low alcohol, and you can have 2-3 glasses and not be schwasty.
Yeah, and I think also like the fun thing of having both of these side by side, right? You get kind of more of like that greenness, minty, tea-like brightness of this rosé, but here is like your fruit-driven raspberry, in your case watermelon, like very fruit-driven and snappy example, which is fun to play with.
It's fun because I think that if you have a discerning palate, you're gonna like one of these more than the other. If you don't have a discerning palate, like I said, it just depends on what time of day it is. But one of these two generally will speak to everybody that's watching this video right now. the fact that they call it a light red is just a little added irony to it. I think I remember Damon telling me, it's like we called it light red because we always wanted to make a rosé back in the days when rosé wasn't cool yet. Yeah, and so it's like what do you call this wine that we really want to make, but we actually do want to sell some of it too? So you call it light red.
And I feel like also when you look at like super classic rosé that's not from Provence, like this is kind of what it looks like when you look at some of the classic rosés from Portugal or Spain or other aspects of Europe, like Churrasco Abruzzo in Italy and all the fun things you're finding from elsewhere in that country. Like you usually have deeper colored rosés, but like there's this weird association of deep colored rosé being inelegant, but it can be very delicious and pretty.
There's something to say about that too, because there is a lot of rosé that comes out of this fair country that is that color, and it is not quite elegant, I would say. And I think that misassociation of rosé needing to be this more of this pink salmon-y color to associate it more closely with the classic, more popular styles of Provence has gotten us there. And like I said, with every single one of these wines, the looks are deceiving. It's not exactly what you're expecting.
And I think also what's really fun about these wines is I know the Bliss wine family is very open to trying new things all throughout the world and all the amazing things that Andrey picks, but like what's cooler than looking at a country like Australia where probably some of your friends are like, oh, it's just yellowtail and like bad wine, to see people making modern, idiosyncratic styles of wine that are unique to their parts of Australia, but also to their access to education and training and going around the whole world of wine before coming home and going, I'm gonna make really pretty wine in high altitude, windy vineyards that is like distinctly Australian, which is cool.
Idiosyncratic was another one of the words I was waiting for John to use.
I'm waiting for this bingo card. Lots, idiosyncratic. I wonder what else is on there. We'll find out.
You'll hear about it. So we know that red wine is delicious, and we know that for some of us watching, we're just getting you into not red wine, and this is a crowd pleaser. I mean, unabashedly, like if you don't like this kind of like juicy but like still like really well structured style, I think that you're looking for outliers. There is something very, very straightforward but yet very elegant about this bottle. This is Cabernet Shiraz. This is a blend that is super, super common in Australia. And it's really just common in Australia, but historically it was actually done in France. Have you ever heard of Chateau Palmer's, like random series that they combine Chateau Palmer with Jean-Louis Chauve's Syrah?
That's like my favorite thing to do in like fancy fine wine. Is somebody's like, oh, I really love Bordeaux, but I also like Syrah. It's like, well, what if I told you Palmer made a wine that's both? But it's so good. The historical 20th century wine, it's delicious.
And well, I mean, and so every single winery, basically in Australia, makes a Shiraz and they make a Cabernet. And then what do you do with the remainder? You make Cab Shiraz. And it's it makes a lot of sense because the two grapes actually do work really well together. But here it is predominantly Cabernet. That's why you get a little bit of that the very distinct blackcurrant kind of smell to it. But it doesn't have that green kind of quality to it because, again, we're in Clare Valley. It's hot. The grapes are actually picked on March 1st, so fairly early. Like that's like the equivalent of September 1st here in the Northern Hemisphere. And they do that to specifically preserve that freshness, but the flavor profile of Cabernet still stands out. The cool thing about this is, again, not overpowering, not over the top. If it's it's a heat wave basically everywhere in the country as we're recording. Well, here it's not bad. It's like 80 degrees outside, but for our friends down in Texas, oof. The wine is still elegant and really brisk enough for you to enjoy with. I would say this is a really good burger wine as well.
What burger are you going to pair with this friend?
Well, I had this insane patty melt last night. It was a Crown Chai, and I have to say it was one of the best patty melts. It's Steak and Shake quality.
What's a Steak and Shake?
I know, East Coasters. So this
sounds like a dance move on like TikTok.
The patty melt itself was just insanely rich, but something like this would kind of like help you out with that richness of it. It was just so juicy and so like delicious, and it was perfect. The best way I can describe it. The other things like like people always ask us like, oh, it's Cabernet, so you should have steak with it. I'm like, no. I want to have like hamburger helper or something like much more basico than a ribeye with my Cabernet. A lot of times, I think
this is taco Cabernet.
Fuck yeah. It's like the classic pairing of a Big Mac with 45 mouton.
See, what's funny is my go-to McDonald's order has a very interesting name. It's where you take the McDouble, you open it up, you put the McChicken in the middle, but you remove one of the buns because you don't want all those carbs. But it's McChicken, McDouble on the outside, so you get like the textural contrast. But I think this would be fun with that.
That actually sounds very much like a KFC Double Down.
What?
I believe I'm using the correct term.
I've never heard. They make like burgers at KFC?
Yeah, it was a fried chicken sandwich with fried chicken as the bun.
Oh God!
I know.
I don't want this wine with that.
No.
The more the food I want this wine.
Maybe this wine, but definitely not that one. My McDonald's go-to is a McDouble extra pickles. So we share that in common as well.
Yes. Are we cheersing to McDoubles? Okay. Yes.
God, we're so trashy. The moral of the story is that Australia, once again, as John said, is no longer about average quality wine with animals doing stuff on the labels. It is not just critter wine. There are serious winemakers, and we wanted to bring this lineup in the dog days of summer because it's also an opportunity to show that great wine doesn't have to cost your firstborn either. But nothing is what it seems, and that's kind of the theme for today.
Yeah, and I think coming off of that, right, like the most important thing about wine is that it's delicious, it's fun, and it makes you happy, and what better when you make it interesting as well and showcase kind of a fun off the beaten path producer in a very classic region in a country we should be thinking about more often. Thank you for sharing these. I actually have never had any of these wines before. So you'll definitely see these in my rotation coming up this summer.
Well, that's great to hear. And these bottles are for you to keep, sir.
Oh, yeah, you're so kind.
Yeah, we gotta pay the man. All right, so that does it for this month's edition of What's in the Box. We invite you to go on our website, learn more about all of these wines, get some for your friends and family, sign up for the Bliss Wine Club at blisswineconcierge.com. Follow us on Instagram at blisswineconcierge. And thanks again to all of our friends, family. Enjoy the dog days of summer, and until next time. Cheers.